Hey Reef Builders, what's going on out there? I'm Evan Montgomery and I'm coming at you today from the workshop here in the Reef Builder studio. You know, it's been a little while since I was on this side of the camera. I think the last time was about 4 or 5 months ago. I did a video from my house showing off some of my favorite old school kind of classic corals, a lot of which were Montiporas, and this is going to be kind of a follow-up to that. I've had a few issues in my tank recently that pretty much only affected the Montiporas. All the other corals are just fine. I think it all started, oh gosh, a month or so ago. I had a pretty drastic alkalinity swing. It's all sorted out now, but I think that was kind of the tipping point that started a lot of the issues that I'm having with the Monties right now. Basically, it comes down to Montipora eating nudibranchs, which we've been battling here at the studio for quite a while, and I considered myself lucky that I didn't have any in my home tank, or at least I thought. But I think once the alkalinity kind of swung a little bit, in addition to corals just kind of shading each other out, kind of weakened a lot of them and allowed the Montipora eating nudibranchs that I didn't think I have to actually rear their ugly heads and start doing some actual damage to my corals. So unfortunately I lost a couple of them. My stellata that I had been growing out for a couple of years is no longer with me. But everything else still was, and I caught it in time. You know, I spent a few hours last night really going through the tank, ripping out all the dead stuff, trimming off the edges that were still alive, and just generally cleaning up the tank. You know, it was a long overdue project. So a lot of what I was able to save are parts of my Langsai cap. You'll recognize that by the purple rim on this bright green Montipora cap. You know, it was a huge coral, one of the probably biggest that I've ever grown, as the full colony was. I probably should have tackled this a few weeks ago before the Nudies really got a chance to take over, but there's enough left here that's worth saving. So I've got 4, 5, 6 of the chunks of the Langsai cap. You can see there where the white part is, where it's dead. That was actually completely shaded because the cap is a scrolling coral. So it was actually the same colony was just shading itself out, basically. And then right along the edge there is where the Montipora eating nudibranchs like to hang out. This little guy here is all that's left of my red Monti cap. That was also one of the bigger corals I think I've ever grown out. I do have a backup mini colony here at the studio in case I need some of my original strain back, but I'm really hoping that what's left of this here is actually enough to clean up and re-glue in my tank and actually save it. So this is about 1/3 of my colony of Montipora hispida that I had, or still have. I cut off all the edges around and a lot of the stuff close to the rocks as well that I think were affected by the Nudies. So there's still a chunk in my tank that's still attached to the rock, but this piece looked just healthy enough that I think I might be able to save that as well. And then here's a couple little chunks of it that broke off when I was fragging it out. So I really tried to get most of the Nudies off of the coral last night when I pulled it out of the tank, clip off all the stuff that was affected, but you know, I stuck it under our little microscope here, and I can clearly see right there is a big fat Nudie. They don't move around quite as much when they're out of the water, so he's kind of stationary right now, but definitely still going to be an issue if I don't do anything about that. I'm guessing there's quite a few more than just him on there, but they are pretty small and can be sometimes hard to spot, especially out of the water. So I just thought it'd be fun to take a look under the microscope here and get a close-up look at the demon that's been destroying my Monties here. I think I'm gonna trim these up real nice on the bandsaw, get a nice clean edge so that what's left of these I can take back home and glue to the either frag plugs or rocks. But I want to use the bandsaw so that I can get a nice clean edge, make gluing them a lot easier, and just make sure that where the healthy tissue is, there's just no sign of Montipora eating nudibranchs anymore. And I know there's still a few of them in my system, but hopefully I can get that isolated. You know, I took out most of the affected stuff, at least I hope so. So yeah, I'm gonna cut them up on the bandsaw, give them a nice clean edge, and then I'm gonna go ahead and use some Revive Coral Dip here. I'm not really sure how effective that is against Montipora eating nudibranchs, but you know, I figure it's worth a shot because I almost have nothing to lose at this point. All right, well, I love bandsaws because that would have taken a lot longer the old-fashioned way, but going through here, especially with corals with a less dense, more porous skeleton like Monti's typically have, that only took me a few minutes, and now here I have a whole bunch of really nice, cleanly cut pieces of my old Monti's here. I think I got them all, you know, I hopefully got all the Monti's, the affected areas off with the saw, but just to make sure, I'm gonna take our high pressure kind of wash bottle here and just go over the sink and really blast them to try to get off, you know, any eggs or anything, and then I'm gonna take them under the bright light over here and really just inspect them again, make sure there's no trouble spots, and if I see anything, then I'm going back to the bandsaw to cut those off, or maybe depending on where it is, if I see anything, and maybe I'll just put some glue over the eggs or scrape them off or something like that. Okay, I've got what's left here run through the dip. Then I went ahead and rinsed the dip off, and I have them just sitting out of the water right now, so I can kind of just go over them real carefully here, just eyeball them and make sure I don't see anything else suspicious. Once I get back to my house tonight, I'll give you a little overview of what the tank looks like now, and probably throw in some clips of the tank a few months ago so that you can kind of see the difference that just removing a few Montiporas makes. You know, this is kind of a blessing in disguise. Obviously, it's never fun to lose corals and have issues like this, especially if they persist over a long period of time. But you know, I mean, those corals were needing to come out anyway. But it's kind of gonna be kind of nice to start with some small pieces again and kind of let them grow from scratch. Part of me kind of likes letting my tank get overgrown and not being able to clean all the glass for a little while, because then when I finally do get around to doing that, you know, it's really exciting to see the tank practically brand new again, it feels like. You know, I cleaned up the light fixtures a little bit, wiped down a ton of salt creep, recharged the calc reactor, cleaned the skimmer out, filter rolls got changed yesterday, and a couple other things I took care of, a little water change, siphoning some detritus, stuff like that. It's a little bit late here by the time I got home from work tonight, so I don't think I'm gonna put any of the corals in the display today. Right now I've just got them down in the sump. The only one I think I might put in the display tonight is that tiny piece of the red Montipora, the Capricornus, just because there's so little of it left and it's really not in great shape. I kind of want to find a spot down here where it's like halfway shaded so that it can kind of reacclimate to the light. And since that's my only small piece of that coral, I think I'm going to prioritize that. You know, I have a few acros in here that were just really in no man's land with all that space taken up by the Montis, and I posted those up on the rocks a little bit here last night, and I think they're gonna kind of take the priority from here. You know, I got 5 or 6 pieces of that lynx eye cap I cleaned up earlier today. I don't think I'm gonna put them all back in here. Maybe just 1 or 2 of them, probably a little bit lower down, maybe further off to the side of the tank instead of so front and center. And then probably in the future try to be a little more diligent about trimming them back. So let's take a closer look at see what the tank looks like right now, and I'll show you a couple new things I got in here, I guess, since the last update. If you saw my classic corals video from, I think it was about back in October or so, you'll immediately notice the difference in this tank without all of these Monti caps here right up front. You know, I do kind of miss the big red and green centerpieces that I had in this tank, but you know, now that I'm seeing the fish have all this extra swimming room and the flow just getting around the tank a whole lot better, and actually giving some space for some of my other kind of higher end corals to finally take off, I think this was a totally worthwhile endeavor to do, even despite the nudies. You know, I mean, with that being the case, I would have had to do it anyway, but no matter what, I think it wasn't too much longer before I would have done it. So I guess let's start. I mentioned I got a couple new things. You know, actually I don't think I got any new corals since the video, my last video, but I did have an orangeback fairy wrasse, and he kind of just randomly passed away. He was just not doing well one night, and then the following morning he was a goner. I don't know exactly what their natural lifespan is, but you know, I had him for 5 years or so, which I feel like he had a few more years in him. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. He was fat and happy, very well fed, but I replaced him with a little yellow-headed fairy wrasse, or tricolor fairy wrasse, whichever you want to call it there, and he just settled right in. Day one when I dropped him in there, he's never hidden, he's always been out, very hungry appetite, gets along with everybody else in the tank just great, and you know, it's kind of hard for me to imagine a reef tank without a wrasse of some sort in there, so it didn't take me very long to find a replacement for him. I also got a Midas Blenny, which I'm not actually sure if he's going to make an appearance here right now. He's usually hiding somewhere here under the Milka Stylo, but we'll see if he pops out. I think that's about all actually that I've gotten as far as new fish goes in the last couple months. So a couple new things to kind of spice up the tank just a little bit. Let's see, this Walt Disney acro here has been really shaded out under this massive bird's nest. So yesterday when I was in here, I got a chance to kind of extract him and get him back out into the light. You can see the base is kind of pale. There's a little bit of cyano on some of the branches, but I think given the new position here, I think he's going to do a lot better. Honestly, I think in the near future, I'm going to pull this entire bird's nest out, because I discovered yesterday it's actually, I guess bird's nests don't usually encrust, but it's not encrusted or stuck to the rocks really at all. So I could pull that entire thing out, kind of turn it upside down, and probably clip off just about a quarter of that there to save, and probably find a home for the rest of it somewhere else, or depending on how many small branches there are and stuff like that. But this bird's nest is really starting to take over the tank a little bit too much also. You know, and I've got a few acros over here that are still right up on the glass to the point where I still can't clean it. But my focus yesterday was mainly on the Montis and the corals that were actually having issues and kind of needed some rescuing. So again, here in the near future, I'll start dealing with the acros, but it was just Montis for now that I messed with. Surprisingly a little bit here, the red digitata seems completely unaffected by the nudies, knock on wood. You know, there's some of it's dying back a little bit just because the green star polyps are growing up on it back there. But the red Monti's outgrowing the green star polyps so far, so I'm not going to mess with that too much. The what's it called, Hollywood Stunner chalice up here probably needs a trim here soon also, because it's starting to sting the green digitata there. Here's that Hispida. I'll throw in a clip from the old video so you can see what it looks like, but you know, it's lost a ton of color. Those polyps were a lot brighter before than they are now, and then it was encrusted all the way up on the glass to the left, and then it went all the way over and was starting to shade out the clam here. So I cut out the majority of it. That piece of it that I cleaned up earlier down at the studio, I'm really not sure what I want to do with that. I do have another tank set up that I might just put it in for now, just to kind of hold it. But that's such a fast growing coral, I really don't feel like I need to kind of supplement what I already have with even more. This spatulata was also just kind of getting overgrown by the Langsai cap, so I think it's happy to finally get some sunlight and some more flow. This Hoaxamai little blue guy here, was getting completely covered by xenia back in this little crack back here. So I went ahead and scraped out all the xenia that was on the rockworks that I possibly could. And now that those Montis are gone, I have all this space down on the bottom to kind of stage corals again. This Leptostrea was completely underneath that red Monti. You can see the front half of it or so is gone there, but I think there's enough left to where that should make a pretty rapid comeback. That's always been one of my favorite corals, so I'm kind of happy to see that get a little more attention here now. Here's the Jedi Mind Trick Montipora. And that also seems to be one of the Montis that is not affected by Nudies at the moment. I didn't really trim that back too terribly much, other than to kind of open up some space around our Starmint candy coral here. That has not seen much light at all for about a year or so. So I think there's enough left there. It should be able to make a recovery. Let's see, the purple stylos growing in real well, like they always do. But a lot of these acros I think are going to get a trim soon, just because they're getting a little out of hand for the size of this tank here, and I'd kind of like to fit a few other things in there. The clam, the big squammy that I've got, is also super happy to finally be getting a little more light, not being crowded out by the Montis. The Palaustrea is doing excellent as always. The Pectinia in the back here, I'd pretty much forgotten that I'd had. The Monti in front of it had pretty much completely blocked that from view. It was getting light, but you couldn't really see it from the front of the tank. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that the Aquascape turned out here and removing those corals. I didn't film the process of actually removing the corals last night. Removing corals seems kind of self-explanatory. You know, you kind of just reach in there and pull them out and break them up if you have to. Some of them came out in one piece and others did not, but that's okay. They were mostly dead anyway. Like I said, I fixed some of the issues I was having with the calcium reactor just not being extremely consistent. Basically just took it all apart, reset it, got a new piece of tubing for the peristaltic pump, and it's cranking away now. So I think we're in good shape for the time being, and you know, probably remove a few more of these acros here before too long. I need to get some more salt so I can do some more detritus siphoning and stuff like that down underneath the rocks. But once I finish that up, I think this tank's gonna pretty much go back to just coasting. So I think that pretty much covers the gist on what's been happening with my home aquarium recently. You know, it really has been on autopilot until the Monti Nudies showed up, Monti eating Nudies showed up, which was a bit of a surprise, I have to admit, because I haven't really got any new corals in this tank for quite some time, and definitely not any Montis for a while. So they must have come in, you know, a while ago and just kind of been laying low until something stressed out the Montis and kind of gave them an opportunity to start feasting on them a little bit more. You know, unfortunately, Nudies are one of the most common aquarium pests in a reef tank, and there's really not a great way to deal with them in the tank. You know, and if you can't remove the coral and if you're not willing to chop things up a little bit, you might be stuck with them for a while, or just stuck with them until they wipe out all your Montis. So by removing the corals from the tank and really getting in there, breaking them up and cutting them up and squirting them off and brushing off the eggs and all the stuff I did earlier today, you know, I think they are a manageable pest. So don't get too discouraged if you see them in your tank, but do try to take care of them before they get completely out of control. And I'm actually kind of tempted, you know, if I can remove the right corals in the right places, to actually pull some of the live rock out, because that's taking up a significant amount of space in here, I think more than it needs to be. So I might try to open up the Aquascape here at some point. You probably noticed when I was showing some of the corals up close here how many vermetid worms or vermetid snails I've got in this tank. There's still a heck of a lot of them, but there's a lot less than there was 24 hours ago. I was shocked when I pulled those Monti caps out, how many of them were hiding out underneath there. I probably pried off no less than 100 of them, and the only reason there's still some in here is because basically after pulling out about 100 of them, it's just getting a little tedious, and I kind of wanted to move on to some other aspects of the cleanup instead of just spending my entire night doing vermetid worms. So next time I've got my hands in the tank and I'm cleaning things up, or just pretty much doing general maintenance, I'm just going to keep slowly chipping away at them, remove a handful of them here and there every time it's convenient for me. And they're really not the worst pest in my opinion. They don't really seem to be bothering anything in here too bad. Definitely not like the Monti Nudies were. And they're unsightly, but as long as you stay ahead of them, it's not like they pop up overnight like an Aptasia can or something like that. So as long as you keep an eye out for them and just kind of stay on top of it, you probably don't have to worry about the vermetids too terribly much. They don't really seem to be bothering anything in here really that much. So I'm just gonna, like I said, kind of just slowly keep chipping away at those. There is definitely something appealing to me. I think it's a little bit more natural looking to have less species of coral in the tank that grow bigger instead of a whole bunch of little frags just glued everywhere on the rockwork like you see in a lot of people's tanks. I think this tank strikes a nice balance as far as that goes. I've got some small frags glued around here and there, but seeing nice large colonies that you can really appreciate what they turn into, I think that's more or less my goal in the tank. Over in my frag tank, I've got some really nice LPS, some torches, some other acros and stuff that just really aren't able to shine over there, and they're not getting the attention that they need. I don't spend a whole lot of time looking in that tank because unless I turn off the flow and look top down, you can't really see everything that's going on in there. So once I get a little more space opened up in here, I'm really looking forward to bringing a few of those over from the frag tank and putting them in a display where they can be properly enjoyed. The lighting's over here is better, the flow is better, and I think they'll just do better overall. So a few of my favorites that I've got over in the frag tank, I'd like to move into the display here before too long and kind of mix things up a little bit. It felt really good today to chop up and clean up some of those Montis. Even if I don't end up putting them all back in here, I've got some nice clean frags that I can share with other people now. This was a good opportunity with the Nudies to actually kind of force my hand into doing a little much needed maintenance on this tank. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, throw some comments down below, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and don't forget here, if you are in the Denver area or anywhere in Colorado or the surrounding areas, we've got Reefstock coming up here in about 2 weeks actually from the time of recording this video. That's a really fun time. We've got big raffle prizes this year, some great speakers. It should be a fantastic show because it's been about 2 years since the last one thanks to COVID. So everybody's really excited to get back into that. Go to reefstock.show for more information, and if you want to buy tickets, book your hotel rooms and all that fun stuff. But until next time, or until Reefstock, I'll talk to you all again later. Peace.